Move to the subject of education again, Dr. Christopher Tyler, Vice President of Harrison Teachers Association.
Hi,
Good to see you again, Doctor.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. We've got to know each other pretty well the last couple of weeks. I've been down in your office and up in Albany with you. And I compliment you on your approachability to your communities. I'm here to really speak about how education will be affected by the governor's budget. It seems like the governor has been getting traction on his budget a little bit in parts by attacking education. And he has a myth that is being circulated around Albany and around the state that the New York State public schools are so poorly performing that they're the 34th of all the states in education results. So I kind of did a little research to try to figure out where he came up with that 34th position for us, and it seems like it comes from a U.S. Census statistic that was reporting on New Yorkers over the age of 25 who had a high school diploma in 2007. That means these individuals graduated from high school over a decade ago. Well, New York has made quite a bit of progress in their public schools in that decade, and the trajectory has been phenomenal, really, for New York's public schools. So the truth, really, is the New York's public schools are second in the nation in a full complement of wide-ranging, multiple measures of educational policy and performance. There are more New York public schools students are taking and succeeding on advanced placement tests than any time in history. New York is fourth in the nation in improving graduation rates. And the gaps, which we've been struggling as educators to kind of close this education gap between rich and poor, well, those gaps between poor and non-poor students have been closing in New York State faster than any other state in the Union, according to a national assessment of educational progress coming out by the Federal Department of Education. So really, the truth is that public education in New York and in your district has been on a very successful trajectory. And we're very concerned that the trajectory is going to be halted by the proposed budget cuts. It's going to devastate your constituents' schools. The proposed cuts is about $1.5 billion to schools. That's the largest total dollar cut in history in New York State. The proposed cuts are 3 times the size of last year's cuts. Last year's cuts left 10,000 educators less in New York State. The cuts are going to negatively affect class sizes. The one important statistic that has shown the most in affecting outcomes of students. It's going to cut course offerings. It's going to cut important counseling services. We've heard counseling services both in the community, well, the counseling services in the schools are going to be cut as well. And it's going to affect library services. We just can't simply cut our way to excellence in New York State. We've made great progress, but that progress will be halted by these cuts. So I urge you to do everything in your power to kind of mitigate these cuts that are coming down. Now, it's just not this year, but it's also the proposed tax cap. And we've heard wonderful things. I've been very dead chuffed, really, to hear from Chris and Carol about the circuit breaker. You know, educators for years have been touting the circuit breaker as a viable alternative to the 2% tax cap. And I'd urge you to bring that back up in your committee and really work hard to push that and educate, be a leader, and educate the public about how the circuit breaker is going to really do the effect of mitigating taxes and property taxes. And my colleague from White Plains will talk a little bit more about that tax cap and how decimating it will be to the schools. I'm a product of Massachusetts schools, Red Sox fan, sorry, but I was in high school. I was a sophomore when Proposition 2.5 came through Massachusetts. And Proposition 2.5, my school never really recovered. It still hasn't to this day recovered, and that was back in 1982. What happened in Massachusetts? And they were fairly smart. They gave some exemptions to that tax cap, but it never really quite did the trick. Anything that didn't have a high stake test at the end of the year was decimated. Music, art, sports. I was sitting with a bucket by the traffic lights collecting money on the weekends to play soccer. So we have to be careful exactly what we're going to get when we get this tax cap coming through. Thank you very much for your time.
Let me ask you a question here, though. And I sort of ask this to everybody who's dealing with this, because I pretty much had universal dislike of the tax cap. If the tax cap is coupled with meaningful mandate relief, then do you see it as a viable alternative?
I think, but from what I understand right now, the governor's not backing off that idea of having any exemption relief from the tax cap. And that would very much concern me. Let me offer this to all of you because I think it's rather interesting. You know, we've all talked to the governor from both parties and what have you. One of the things that we don't see the governor pushing a lot is the tax cap. It's there, you know, it's sort of looming like an iceberg in the middle of the ocean with you know, your ship heading toward it. But we don't hear that being as big an issue, you know, as a number of other different things too, including ethics reform and what have you. So I don't know that that's what we're going to get. I know that it's proposed. And of course, he obviously has his chance to make his budget amendments. Many of us, myself included, mentioned to him that without meaningful mandate relief, nobody wanted to vote for the tax cap. And he assured me on a personal level that we would get the meaningful mandate relief. I don't know if you were here earlier when I explained basically what the basis for the mandate relief was. It is a preliminary report. Again, it is the beginning of the dialogue and the fix, not the fix. And it's not a panacea as with anything, as you know. So, but I appreciate your input to this. And again, it's you once again are echoing what I'm hearing from a lot of educators. You know, They must be smart people.
I don't know, I was a college professor. We all thought we were smart, right? All you had to do was ask us, right?